Trump used the opportunity to praise the leadership of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Take a look.
If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him. I've already said he is really very much of a leader. I mean, you can say, oh, isn't that a terrible thing? He called, I mean, the man has very strong control over a country. Now, it's a very different system, and I don't happen to like the system. But certainly in that system, he's been a leader far more than our president has been a leader.
He mentions that Putin has, a 92% approval rating or 82% approval rating. Like, that means something in Russia. I mean, the Poles of Russia. I mean, is he talking about Polish people or is he talking about Poles? Because the dictatorship that is Putin is controlling the Poles, okay?
Yeah, the media has no representation in Russia.
Right, go ahead.
Gay people have no representation in Russia. People have no rights in Russia. There are tons of human rights violations in Russia. Listen, Donald Trump, if you're going to praise everybody who has something nice to say about you, what happens next when the dictators around the world come out and say, well, we like what Donald Trump did today? Is the president, the potential president of the United States of America, then going to have their back? You don't say nice things about Putin who doesn't deserve it just because he said nice stuff about you.
It's so unpatriotic. That's what it is. And for him to say such things in front of our military is a disgrace to this. It's a disgrace, in my opinion.
Do you have a relationship with Vladimir Putin, a conversational relationship, or anything that you feel you have sway or influence over his government?
I do have a relationship. I never met Putin. I don't know who Putin is. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer.
Well, I was saying that, you know, when you talk about what's going to be in court and what's not going to be in court, the people around Trump, the circle around Trump, who may be aiding his obstruction of justice, those people, of course, are vulnerable to criminal charges. And so that may well have been, you know, going through McGahn's mind when he was deciding that he didn't want to be complicit in this. Those are the people that are vulnerable.
Yeah, and that was something that happened in Watergate, of course, is that people were charged around the president prior to the president being brought up. What do you think about the idea of the facts we have adding up to a plausible claim of obstruction on the face?
You know, I step back from this and I think about what I would do if I were the judge in the case. And so one measure of obstruction of justice, is there a pattern of conduct here? Well, there's a pattern of conduct with respect to Comey, now close to Mueller. There's a pattern of interference with the investigation, what he said to Comey, what he said to Coates, the national security advisor, what he says to Sessions. There's a pattern of conduct. There's a pattern of inconsistent versions of what's going on, inconsistent accounts. Well, that also connotes somebody who's trying to do something that he shouldn't do. So there's a pattern of conduct. But, you know, it's interesting. Mueller is quite right not wanting to, he wants to get to the bottom of this and not bringing charges until all the ducks are in a row. It is an enormous thing to make this accusation against a president. And I think he wants to do it. He wants there to be, if there's anything with respect to the Russian investigation, he wants those charges. If there's anything with respect to money laundering, he wants that. And the best play here, the best charge here would be to put obstruction of justice alongside other accusations.
Well, that is something a lot of people are talking about what would happen if that was done in the absence of findings of criminal infraction and the underlying questions. My question to you, Richard, is the defenders of the president will say something like the following: the president is frustrated and angry at what he views as fundamentally an unjust inquiry, and so therefore he is, quote, fighting back, in his words. What do you say to that?
Well, this president is unable to control his frustration and anger, and that's a psychological problem. It's a very dangerous one when he's in control of nuclear weapons, because there is a lot to be frustrated about in the presidency, whether it's this investigation or crises around the world or political opponents criticizing you. And yes, we have a free press in the United States of America, and the free press is not always going to be complimentary of the president of the United States. So his frustration and his anger is leading him to do irrational things here, to tread certainly on very close to the edge, if not over the edge, with respect to criminal obstruction of justice. We've seen his tweets. This is not a good situation, not the behavior of a stable man.
Richard Painter and Nancy Gertner, I thank you both. Up next, watch in real time the lengths Trump TV went through to try to spin the report that the president ordered the firing of Robert Mueller, reporting they themselves confirmed. Can the network save the president?
I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I don't think I've ever met him.
You would know it if you did, wouldn't you?
I think so, yeah, I think so. So I don't think I've ever met him. I mean, if he's in the same room or something, but I don't think so.
Never spoken to him on the phone?
I've been in Moscow. I didn't meet him in Moscow. Where?
Never spoken to him on the phone?
I have never spoken to him on the phone, no. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer.
It has been a remarkable 24 hours over at Trump TV. Last night, New York Times broke the news that in June, President Trump ordered his White House counsel, Don McGahn, to fire special counsel Robert Mueller, but then backed down after McGahn refused and threatened to quit. Because the story broke shortly before his show, the president's chief propagandist had to scramble to figure out how to cover it, which led to a hilarious reversal in less than an hour. First, Sean Hannity dismissed the story, but then, after finding out his network had itself confirmed parts of it, Hannity changed course, saying, okay, the story may be true, but so what? It doesn't matter. We'll deal with it later, before abruptly throwing to a car crash from the day before.
At this hour, the New York Times is trying to distract you. They have a story that Trump wanted Mueller fired sometime last June, and our sources, and I've checked in with many of them, they're not confirming that tonight. And the president's attorney dismissed the story and says, no, no comment, we're not going there. And how many times has the New York Times and others gotten it wrong? All right, so we have sources tonight just confirming to Ed Henry that, yeah, maybe Donald Trump wanted to fire the special counsel for conflict. Does he not have the right to raise those questions? You know, we'll deal with this tomorrow night. We have a shocking video of the day to bring you, by the way. This footage comes to us from Arizona.
So that was last night. Then this morning, the host of the president's other favorite cable news show pointed to the president calling the story fake news and then told their viewers they shouldn't care about it. One of Donald Trump's favorite boasts.
I don't have teleprompters here, folks. I don't need teleprompters. It's called, like, up here, and it's called memory, and it's called other things.
I have a good memory and all that stuff, like a great memory. I have a really good memory.
And I have a very good memory. I have a good memory, like a great memory.
I have a great memory. I'm blessed with a great memory.
One of the great memories of all time.
But a funny thing happens whenever Trump gets in front of a lawyer, as he might have to do with Mueller and his team. His great memory suddenly fails. For example, there were 35 times he said he didn't remember during a deposition in the Trump University lawsuit in December 2015, and the 24 times he said in a separate Trump University lawsuit deposition in 2012, not to mention the time he couldn't remember exactly how he had boasted about his excellent memory. Quoting from his December 2015 deposition transcript, lawyer, do you believe you have one of the best memories in the world? Trump, that I can't tell you. I can't tell for other people, but I have a good memory. Lawyer, you've stated, though, that you have one of the best memories in the world. Trump, I don't know. Did I use that expression?
I got a phone call directly from Mr. Trump himself. I can tell you that's never happened before. He says that he has, and I quote, the world's best memory, and that everybody knows that.
One of the great memories of all time. You know, I have a very good memory.
I have a great memory.
It's called, like, up here, and it's called memory, and it's called other things.
What do I have to get involved with Putin for? I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him.
You did say on 3 different occasions you had a relationship with him. Now you say there is none.
Putin even sent me a present, beautiful present, with a beautiful note. I spoke to all of his people.
Today we learned the U.S. economy grew in its first year under Donald Trump, just maybe not as much as the president might have you believe. The economy actually added fewer jobs last year than any year since 2010. And this chart showing GDP growth since 2009 makes it clear the economy has been steadily growing for years. In fact, if you zoom in there, it's tough to pinpoint just where exactly the Trump economics kicked in. Kimberly-Clark, which makes Kleenex and Huggies, announced a very different plan. On a recent conference call, the company admitted that their windfall from the corporate tax cut will be used to fund their company's plan to lay off around 5,000 people. Yes, you heard that right. Credit where it's due, at least they were honest.
What would that mean if the president fired the special counsel?
I think that would be a mistake myself. There was a suggestion made yesterday that the White House would just dismiss Bob Mueller, the newly appointed special counsel, to look into all this. What would your advice be if that suggestion came up?
Any effort to go after Mueller could be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency.
Are there any Republicans signed on to any legislation to protect Mueller in the House?
No. But I do think it's important.
Zero.
Zero. I think President Lincoln had it right when he said public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. And public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of letting Robert Mueller complete his investigation. And if Trump got him removed, people would take to the street. Why are so many people threatening to resign? Because there's a pattern of obstruction of justice. Donald Trump tried to get Michael Flynn's investigation dropped. He then fired the FBI director. He then tried to fire the deputy FBI director. And then he tried to get his own attorney general to resign. And now we know he tried to get Robert Mueller fired. This is a pattern, and even a mediocre prosecutor would be able to prosecute this case.
Do you have a sense that this is coming to a head anytime soon? Do you have any sense in Congress that that's the case?
I have a sense that the special counsel's investigation is going to come to a head when they interview President Trump. Trump lied over 2,000 times, according to the Washington Post last year. And then he's going to go into an interview with FBI agents where if you lie once, it's perjury.
I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I don't think I've ever met him.
You would know it if you did, wouldn't you?
I think so, yeah, I think so. So I don't think I've ever met him. I mean, if he's in the same room or something, but I don't think so.
Never spoken to him on the phone?
I've been in Moscow. I didn't meet him in Moscow. Where?
Never spoken to him on the phone?
I have never spoken to him on the phone, no. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer.